Before we begin, if you believe relationships are more than routines, if you think love should be chosen every single day, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We open doors people are often too afraid to walk through. If you've ever looked at someone you love and wondered, are we still choosing each other, or are we just continuing? Then this story is for you. Now let me tell you about the night I asked my husband a question that changed everything. I never thought I'd be the one to bring it up. Not him. Not after a fight. Not during one of those explosive moments where emotions spill over, because silence becomes unbearable. No. It came from me. Calm. Steady. Almost rehearsed, though I had never practiced it out loud. We were sitting across from each other late at night. The house was finally quiet. No television humming in the background. No notifications lighting up the room. No distractions to soften what needed to be said. Just the dim kitchen light hanging above us, and the soft, rhythmic sound of a spoon tapping gently against porcelain as he stirred his tea. I watched his hands. I always watch hands when I'm nervous. Faces can lie. Voices can shift. But hands? Hands hesitate. Hands reveal. I've been thinking, I said. The words floated between us, light but heavy at the same time. About us. He smiled. That familiar smile. The one I knew by heart. The safe smile. The one that had carried us through years of marriage, shared laughter, inside jokes, predictable Fridays, grocery lists, anniversaries, apologies, and forgiveness. That sounds dangerous, he joked. I laughed too quickly. Because this wasn't a joke. I want to ask you something, I continued. But I need you to really hear me before you answer. That made him pause. The spoon stopped moving. His eyes lifted from the tea to meet mine. Curious now. Slightly guarded. I'm listening, he said. I took a breath that felt heavier than it should have. I want us to try something different. The word different didn't sound threatening. Not yet. It just hovered there between us. Different, he repeated carefully. Not wrong. Not forbidden. Not dramatic. I clarified. Just different. He leaned back slightly, studying me. Different how? I looked away for just a second, collecting courage, then back at him. Not like that, I said quickly. Not what you're thinking. He raised an eyebrow. And what am I thinking? I smiled. But my heart was racing so hard I could hear it in my ears. That this is about fixing something. He didn't deny it. It's not, I said softly. At least not exactly. The truth was harder to say out loud. I hadn't been unhappy, but I also hadn't been fully awake. There was a restlessness inside me, not dissatisfaction, not resentment, something quieter than that. A subtle hunger, a curiosity, about myself, about him, about the version of us that existed before we learned each other so well that nothing surprised us anymore. I just want us to be braver, I said. More honest than we've been. His expression softened. I thought we were honest. We are, I replied. But there's honesty, and then there's truth. That's when he went quiet. He didn't interrupt. Didn't rush to reassure me. Didn't laugh it off. And somehow, that silence felt more dangerous than any argument we'd ever had. What are you asking me to try? He finally said. I swallowed. I want us to talk about the things we don't say, I answered. The thoughts we edit before they reach our mouths. The questions we pretend we don't have. He exhaled slowly. That's a big ask. I know. He stared at the table for a long moment, then looked back at me. Is there something specific you're circling around? I nodded. My pulse thudded in my ears. There's one question, I said. And once I ask it, I don't know if we'll be able to unhear it. His jaw tightened slightly. Ask it. I hesitated. This was the line. The point of no return. If you weren't my husband, I said quietly, would you still choose me? The room didn't explode. There was no shouting. No slam doors. No dramatic music playing in the background. But something shifted. The air itself seemed to lean closer. He blinked once. Twice. That's not a fair question, he said slowly. I know, I replied. But it's an honest one. He leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. Why would you ask that? Because sometimes I wonder, I admit it, if love has become habit. If desire has quietly transformed into loyalty. If we're choosing each other, or just continuing because it's easier than reconsidering. His eyes searched my face as if trying to find evidence of something he'd missed all these years. You think I don't desire you? He asked. That's not what I said. But it's what you're afraid of. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He sat back, running a hand through his hair. And what's my role in this experiment of yours? I want you to ask yourself the same thing, I said. Without marriage, without history, without obligation. If we met today, would you still want me? The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. He was quiet for so long that I began to regret everything. Then he spoke. If I'm being honest, he said carefully, I don't know. That was the moment something cracked open. Not because he said no, but because he didn't say yes. I love you, he added quickly. That hasn't changed. I know, I said. But that question, he continued. It makes me realize how much of my choosing has been unconscious. I nodded. That's what scares me. He looked at me differently then. Not as his wife. Not as his certainty. But as a woman sitting across from him. Asking to be seen without the safety net of vows. You're asking for danger, he said. I'm asking for truth. He gave a faint smile. Those two usually come together. And he was right. The conversation didn't end that night. It stretched into days. Into pauses. Into glances that lasted a little longer than usual. Into moments where our hands almost touched and the air between us felt electric again. Not comfortable, not predictable, but uncertain. Alive. Something had shifted. We were still married. Still sleeping in the same bed. Still sharing coffee in the mornings. But the label was no longer enough. For the first time in years, we weren't leaning on history to hold us together. We were looking at each other as two separate people. Capable of leaving, capable of choosing, capable of wanting. And something strange happened in that space. He started noticing me again. Not out of obligation. Not out of routine. But out of awareness. He asked questions he hadn't asked in years. What are you thinking about lately? What scares you? What excites you? And I realized. I had answers. Answers I had buried under grocery lists and responsibilities and quiet assumptions that love didn't need re-examination. One evening, a few days later, he came home and paused in the doorway the way he used to when we were dating. He just stood there, looking at me. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing, he said. Just seeing you. Seeing me. Not his wife. Not the woman who manages the house. Not the predictable presence in his life. Me. And I felt it again. That subtle spark. That awareness that choice is powerful. We started talking about uncomfortable things. Attraction. Fear. Fantasy versions of ourselves. The people we used to be before we became us. And instead of tearing us apart, it stripped something away. Complacency. We admitted we had both stopped trying. Not because we didn't care, but because comfort had replaced curiosity. We had mistaken stability for passion. We had confused loyalty with active desire. And neither of us wanted that anymore. One night, weeks after the original question, he turned to me in bed and said quietly, "If we met today, I think I'd be nervous around you." Why? I asked. Because you're not as predictable as I thought. I smiled in the dark. That's the point. The truth is, asking that question didn't threaten our marriage. It awakened it. It forced us to stop hiding behind the idea that love, once declared, sustains itself automatically. It doesn't. Love needs to be chosen. Again. And again. And again. Not because you have to, but because you want to. And that's what changed everything. Now when he looks at me, there's something different in his eyes. Not possession. Not certainty. Decision. And when I look at him, I don't see obligation. I see a man who could walk away, but doesn't. Every day, we are choosing each other. Consciously. And that choice, it feels far more intimate than any vow we ever made. That one question didn't break us. It stripped us bare. And in that rawness, We found something we didn't even realize we were missing. Not comfort, not security, but desire rooted in freedom. So if you've ever been afraid to ask the question that might change everything, maybe that's the very question that will bring you back to life. And if this story made you think, even for a second, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes the bravest conversations begin in silence, and the strongest love stories begin the moment comfort is no longer enough.